Sansa's chambers. It stung so much. That was what Sansa was thinking after Jeyne closed the doors to her chambers. She lay on her side as tears welled in her eyes, each blink now forcing them to spill down her cheeks. Resting her head against the feather bed, she placed her hand gingerly over the source of the stinging sensation on her thigh, the very same place where the knight had struck her with the side of his sword in her dream. The moment her fingers brushed the tender flesh, she yelped and jerked her hand back sharply. Sansa hissed in pain, her eyes squeezing shut. Almost immediately, she was drawn back into what she believed was the throne room of the Red Keep. She had never been there in her young life. Yet there she was now, sobbing and looking anywhere but at the boy seated upon the throne. Tears continued to stream down her cheeks as she lay on the bed, while in the dream she stood trembling in the vast hall. "My mother taught me never to hit a lady," Joffrey sneered from the Iron Throne. Sansa saw his eyes roam over her as he bit his lower lip. Fear twisted in her chest as she glanced around the throne room and noticed several lords and ladies standing off to the side. She wanted someone, anyone, to speak up, to help her. Instead, she turned back to the boy king and shuddered when he called out, "Sir Meryn." She watched as the knight, the same unknown knight from her earlier dream, the one who had slammed his sword into her thigh, dipped his head and advanced toward her with a smirk. Joffrey added casually, "Don't hit her face. I like her pretty." Stunned, Sansa turned toward the looming Sir Meryn. Before she could react, he drove a fist into her abdomen. The red-haired girl doubled over, crying out in agony as a thought flashed through her mind. "No, my prince, I..." Her eyes widened as she stared at the knight who had struck her, the very man whose title promised protection, now using his armored fist against her. She stumbled forward as Meryn stepped back, gasps rippling through the assembled lords and ladies. Then he swung again, slamming the flat of his sword into her thigh. To Sansa it felt as though she were seeing everything through her own eyes. She was helpless and trapped. Pain surged through her body from the blow to her stomach and the strike to her leg, and she collapsed to her knees when Joffrey commanded, "Avail her of her dress." "My prince, please!" Sansa screamed, yet her lips, in the dream, did not move. She heard her own voice, felt the desperation in it, but no sound left her mouth. Joffrey did not hear her. Her dream self began to sob as Sir Meryn tore open the back of her dress. Instinctively, she crossed an arm over her chest to keep the fabric from exposing her breasts to the watching crowd. She silently begged the other knights in the room to come to her aid, but they remained where they stood, merely watching. "Please help me," Sansa cried within her mind. "You are knights. Please, help me." Once again, her lips did not move, and her pleas went unheard. "No," Sansa thought as her body, the one lying on the bed, shifted, settling flat against the mattress. Her arms lay limp at her sides as she dreamed of looking over her shoulder where Sir Meryn stared at her. Sansa clutched the front of her torn dress. Her eyes went wide as Sir Meryn lifted his sword. "What is the meaning of this?" Another male voice bellowed. Relief surged through her as she saw Sir Meryn lower his weapon and step aside. Through tears, Sansa caught sight of an enraged Tyrion Lannister entering the throne room. Before she could hear anything more, her eyes flew open and she screamed as pain flared across her abdomen. It was the very same place where Sir Meryn had struck her with his steel-gloved fist in the dream. "Why is this happening to me?" Sansa sobbed, placing her left hand gingerly over her stomach. Beneath her nightclothes, a black and blue bruise, matching the one on her thigh, was already forming. Her right arm rose to shield her eyes as she squeezed them shut, the pain radiating outward from the imagined blow. As soon as her eyes closed, the dreams returned. We never should have left Winterfell," Sansa heard a familiar voice murmur as her arms stretched toward the roaring hearth. She turned sharply to her left and gasped, "Jon?" She hoped she was right, that the man seated beside her, staring into the fire, was Jon. Yet this Jon was different. The boy she had known had been scrawny and dark-haired, but the man beside her was broader, taller, with a scar running down his left cheek beneath his eye. A deep sorrow lingered in his expression, one she felt she should understand, though she did not know why. The sorrow melted away like ice when he turned and offered her a small smile. And for reasons she could not name, she felt relieved. "Where am I, Jon?" Sansa asked, though her lips did not move. Instead, she heard Jon reply, "Don't you wish we could go back to the day we left?" "So we did leave for King's Landing?" she asked silently. With a sigh, she looked around the dimly lit room trying to understand where she was, while hearing herself say, "I want to scream at myself. Don't go, you idiot. This is just a dream," Sansa whispered as realization dawned and she failed to recognize her surroundings. She rose suddenly, gasping as the scene melted away, and found herself standing atop the ramparts of Winterfell beneath heavy snowfall. "This is just a dream, just a dream, just a dream." Then her eyes snapped fully open. Drawing in a shaky breath, Sansa reached out and lifted the hem of her nightdress to just below her breasts. Groaning softly from the pain, she raised her head and upper body to look down. What she saw made terror seize her heart. No, it was just a dream. Just a dream, she thought as she stared at the spreading bruise on her abdomen, followed by the matching mark on her thigh. She shook her head, repeating silently, "Just a dream, just a dream, just a..." A sob broke free from her. She let the fabric fall back into place and lay down once more. "I am to be betrothed to one of the most handsome men in Westeros. My golden prince," she whispered brokenly. "So what's happening to me?" "Bran's chambers, now." Jeyne slightly gathered her skirts as she hurried through the hallway after closing the door to Sansa's chambers. The sight of the bruise on Sansa's thigh weighed heavily on her mind. She remembered seeing similar marks on her father and the other sentries after their training periods, and she had never once seen Sansa wield a sword. Warmth still radiated from the stone walls of the castle, yet a chill lingered in the air, one that had settled over Winterfell since Bran's fall. What had happened to him still stunned everyone. It was the reason so many faces Jeyne rushed past were drawn and solemn. "Everyone is questioning how Lord Bran fell," Jeyne thought as she entered another hallway and climbed a flight of stairs toward Bran's chamber on the floor above. "I have seen him scale walls that should be impossible. Even during winter, when the stones were slick with ice and snow, Bran had climbed without fear or harm, though he had often given Lord and Lady Stark more than a few heart pains." Jeyne frowned as she dashed toward a door guarded by 2 Stark sentries. "But he never fell, until now." "I need to see Lady Stark," Jeyne gasped as she stopped before the guards. With the King's Guard, the Lannister guards, and the Baratheon guards focused on protecting the royal family, the Stark men were the only ones left to oversee Winterfell itself. Jeyne noticed the glance the 2 guards exchanged, one silently questioning whether they should disturb the grieving Lady Stark as she watched over Bran. "Please," Jeyne pressed, her breath still unsteady. "At least tell her this is very important." "What is it?" one of the guards asked. It was then Jeyne realized she did not recognize either of them. "They aren't unsure whether they should disturb Lady Stark," she realized. "They're unsure whether they should let me speak to her." That, she supposed, was unsurprising. With the royal family in Winterfell, additional guards had been drawn from the surrounding villages. Not everyone knew who belonged where, especially when it came to the daughter of the chief steward. "Please tell her it's Jeyne Poole," she urged, steadying her voice. "Tell her that Lady Sansa has awakened. Tell her Lady Sansa needs to see Lady Catelyn immediately." One guard frowned and turned to the other, who huffed quietly before stepping toward the door and knocking. "I asked not to be disturbed," a voice called from within, soft and heavy with grief. Jeyne grimaced at the sorrow in Catelyn's voice, knowing she was about to add to it. "Yes, my lady," Jeyne spoke up before the guards could respond, "but there is something urgent concerning Sansa. Something you need to see." The guards glared at her as the sound of a chair scraping against the floor echoed from inside, followed by footsteps approaching the door. One guard reached for Jeyne's arm, fingers tightening as if to pull her away, while the other began to murmur an apology, just as the door swung open. "Lady Stark," Jeyne said, wrenching her arm free and stepping forward. She took in the worry etched deep into the red-haired woman's face, but continued before the guards could interject. "Sansa is awake, my lady," she added quickly. "But there's something you need to see." Catelyn looked as though she meant to speak, but Jeyne pressed on. "I know you have much on your mind with what has happened to Lord Bran and Sansa, and I am sorry to pull you away from your son, but..." Tell me what's happening to Sansa, Catelyn interrupted, her brow furrowing as her fingers tightened around the beginnings of a healing wheel shaped in the teachings of the Seven. Jeyne glanced at the guards before meeting Catelyn's gaze. My lady, this is something that must be seen. You will not believe me if I try to explain it. In truth, Jeyne did not know if she should explain it, not with unfamiliar guards listening so closely. Instead, she repeated herself, more firmly this time. It's better if you see it with your own eyes. Catelyn exhaled slowly before nodding and stepping back into the room and then closing the door behind her. Jeyne waited with her hands clasped behind her back, shifting her weight nervously under the guard's scrutiny. Relief washed over her when the door opened again and Catelyn emerged. After a brief moment, Jeyne caught sight of Maester Luwin tending to a pale figure beneath heavy furs on the bed. She quickly lowered her gaze as Catelyn closed the door behind her. I apologize again, my lady, Jeyne murmured. Catelyn inclined her head before turning to the guards. No one but myself, Maester Luwin, and Lord Stark is permitted inside. Yes, my lady, one of the guards replied at once. Catelyn then turned back to Jeyne and gently took her arm. Now, Jeyne, she prompted as they began moving in the direction of Sansa's chambers. What is it you wish to show me? To be continued.